Hi, I'm Stéphane Prévost. I would like to introduce you today into how to pay attention to breathing during our mindfulness meditation practice. Now that may sound like, why is it so complicated? I just pay attention to my breath. Well, you're going to see that it is much more complex than meets the eye. And so you usually don't find that kind of precise instructions. And so the consequence is that a lot of people think that they're paying attention to breathing, but in fact they're doing something quite different. Very often, actually, what they're paying attention to is thoughts or images about the breath, and they are not really paying attention to the breathing, to the somatic process of breathing. So let's have a closer look at that. And first, I would like to review a little bit of physiology. Generally speaking, during the in-breath, what happens is that the sympathetic nervous system, which is the activating part of the autonomic nervous system, the one that we don't control, during the in-breath, the sympathetic nervous system gets activated and increases the heart rate. And it does other things too, because as you will see when we look at it more closely, during the in-breath there's a sense that things in general get activated. We sort of wake up. On the other side, on the other hand, when we breathe out, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calming nervous system in general, gets activated, and so it slows down the heart rate. So breathing in, sympathetic nervous system activates, and breathing out, parasympathetic nervous system calms down. Now, of course, with our organism and with physiology, things are never that simple. In other words, the parasympathetic system, yes, generally calms things down, but there's exceptions. And one exception is that it actually activates the activities and functions of the digestive system. And the other exception is that the vagus nerve, or one branch of the vagus nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system that goes down here, goes to the diaphragm and contracts the diaphragm. So in the in-breath, that part of the vagus nerve that contracts the diaphragm gets activated, and so the diaphragm contracts. So just to recap your anatomy in case you're not quite sure, the diaphragm is like a cupola, like this, between the chest and the belly. And when you breathe in, that muscle contracts, and so it pulls open the chest cavity, so it opens the lung, and at the same time it pushes down the organs in the belly. So when you breathe in properly, not only does it open the chest, but your belly is going to move out because it pushes the organs down and out. During the out-breath, the opposite happens. The diaphragm relaxes and the lungs, they get smaller, they collapse, and the belly organs have again more room, and the belly deflates. So that's the movement. So in the in-breath, the vagus nerve activates the diaphragm, pushes it down, opens the lungs, the belly goes out, and in the out-breath, the opposite happens. So this is just a little bit of physiology. Now, let's have a look here at what many people meet when they start to pay attention to the breathing. A lot of people, when they come to mindfulness meditation, they come to it after having lived years of stress, anxiety, and tension. So what happens when we live in stress, anxiety, and tension? I'm going to exaggerate it for you a little bit, but you know how it is when you're anxious, when you're tense. You hold your breath. You contract the shoulder muscles. So people have shoulder pain, neck pain. Everything is up here. And we have a sense that we don't get enough air. And so we try to get more air because we don't have enough air. So everything is up here. What happens is that we overinflate, so to speak. We tense everything up here, and the grounding down here in the belly disappears. And we slowly move into the shape of a carrot. Now, the instinct when we are constantly stressed, anxious, and tense, and we hold our breath constantly. The instinct is, because we feel we don't have enough air, is to try to get more air. And it never works. The more we try to get more air, the more we feel that we lack air. So, this, by the way, has nothing to do with mindfulness meditation and attention to breathing. This is just something to know before we even start with all of that. So, in order to try to undo this process of growing into a carrot, we actually have to do the exact opposite with the breathing. We have to breathe out. We have to squeeze the air out of the lungs, which, what does it do when we breathe out and squeeze the air out of the lungs? By the way, when we are up here in the carrot, what happens? The diaphragm can never really relax very well, and it's constantly tense. So now, if we squeeze the air out of the lungs, just as much as possible, we squeeze every bit of air out of the lung, we retract the belly. What happens is that the diaphragm can start to learn to relax as best as possible. I squeeze air out and so on, and I keep it out there. I've almost no air left. And of course, after a while, what happens is that I really need to breathe in. Now, no, I don't need to breathe in. All I have to do is stop squeezing the air out, and it will breathe in for me. So I let it happen. So here I am, it's out. Now, when I breathe in, I'm not going to hold it. So my air out. I'm not going to, and then hold it. No. When I'm starving for air, I breathe in and let it out immediately. And again, I squeeze out, and then stay with the air out as long as I can. Just stay. And so I do that about 10 times. And you're going to start to see that what happens is that these tensions, they're going to start to let go. And you start to connect with the autonomic part of your breathing, which is that whether you like it or not, you can't stop your breathing. You can't try to kill yourself by breathing out and stop breathing. It just doesn't work. Why? Because the autonomic system is just going to kick in and say, whether you like it or not, you need air, here you are, woof, and the in-breath comes in all by itself. So you're learning to surrender to this mechanism that is there, that you don't have to take care of. Your organism is so fantastic, has hundreds of thousands of years of experience in keeping you alive, so that you can get out of your own way and begin to let the breathing evolve according to its natural way of evolving. So what happens when we begin to undo the carrot? What happens is that instead of having the kind of breathing rhythm where we breathe in the pause at the end of the in-breath because we're holding is longer, and then we can't rest in the out-breath, the rhythm now changes into its opposite. It's and at the end of the out-breath there is a long pause. And then automatically, I'm exaggerating of course, but that's then the opposite, and that's the natural rhythm of the breathing. So now, instead of being up here, the center of gravity has moved back there where it should be. It is in the lower belly. This releases, and when we breathe in, the belly opens. We actually move into a belly breathing as opposed to being locked up here and the diaphragm works half-fast and almost nothing happens in the belly down here. And now it's the diaphragm that does the major breathing work, which is how it's supposed to be, because the intercostal muscles of the chest, they are not the main breathing muscles, okay? So they are not doing the heavy lifting. It's the diaphragm that is supposed to do the heavy lifting of breathing. And so now the diaphragm reclaims its function, and we notice that in the in-breath, as the diaphragm contracts, our belly is opening. And in the out-breath, the belly goes back in. And so we move from the carrot into a pear. And when we are a pear, it's so much easier to go through life. So that's the breathing awareness, moving from the carrot to the pear, with the center of gravity down here, actually in the Eastern traditions, in the martial arts, and so on. All the movements, all the martial arts movements and so on, they're initiated from the lower belly, which is called sometimes the tandem. I think in the Zen tradition it's called the hara. That's the center of gravity. That's where we need to be centered. So We need to be a pair in order to be grounded, relaxed, and allow the inherent normal physiological mechanisms of our organism to take over. All right, so now, yes, this slide simply explains to you what I have explained to you, how to move from the care into the pair. Now, all of these are preliminaries to understand a bit better what the breath is all about, and what the challenges are that we encounter when we begin paying attention to breathing. So having said all that, what's important now to keep in mind is that the mindful attention to breathing has nothing to do with trying to change the breath. In the yoga tradition, you have pranayama, which are all kinds of practices where you basically, in the same way that in the yoga movement you use movement for awareness, in pranayama you use manipulations of the breathing movements for awareness. So nothing to do with all of that. In our mindful awareness to breathing, it's all about simply bringing awareness to the way the breathing process is happening for you now, whether you like it or not, whether you are pleased with it or not, whether it feels good or not. You're not trying to change the breathing. What we are trying to do is simply bring awareness to the way things are. So that's a really important aspect of our practice. If you don't realize that, you're going to start to do funny things that are not going to help you out. All right. Now, how do we pay attention to breathing? First thing is, we have to make sure that our attention is really in the somatic sensations of the breathing process. To understand what that really means, I would like to refer you to my video on attention, what attention is and how to pay attention. There I explain exactly what that means. So I assume that you are clear about the fact that your attention is in the body, in the somatic sensations, and not on thought, on images, or anything else. All right. Now, where in the body with regards to the breathing? Well, if you come to it fresh, you can say roughly that you're going to be able to experience the breathing in your body in three main areas. You can experience the breathing at the nostrils. You can feel the air passing by the nostrils. You can feel how during the in-breath the air is cooler. During the out-breath the air is warmer. So it's that the caressing of the nostrils as the air flows by. So that's one spot you can pay attention to breathing. The other spot is somewhere in the chest, because the chest does participate with the breathing. And of course, the third spot is the belly. Now, as you may start to be able to glean from what I just said before, depending on what kind of shape you're in, so to speak, with regards to stress and tension, if you live your life up here, you're going to actually have a hard time feeling anything moving in the belly, and most of your breathing you will feel happening here. So what I try to avoid for beginners is to pay attention to the breathing here at the nostril, simply because it tends to be a little bit disembodied. And paying attention to the breathing further down helps people to be more deeply, at least at the beginning of meditation practice, helps people to be more deeply connected with the body. So what I like to say is, if possible, bring your attention to the somatic sensations of your breathing in the belly, if possible. But again, it might not be possible because you might not feel much there. So here is my first instruction. Pay attention to the somatic sensations of your breathing there where you experience them most. Wherever that is, in the chest, between the chest and the belly, or the belly, just where you experience them both. Now, as you're paying attention to those sensations, you're going to experience two kinds. You're going to experience the sensations from within the body, the sensations of expansion, contraction. Maybe there is a quivering. There may be some vibrations. Whatever is inside the body that comes with the process of breathing. But you will also have exteroceptive sensations. That means from the outside world, that on the skin. We also feel the touch of your clothes on the skin as the chest and the belly moves and the clothes rub against your skin. So there will be some complex sensations there that you will discover as you bring attention to the breath. So now, as you bring attention to the somatic sensations that accompany the process of breathing, there where you feel them most, we start with the first step, which is, as you can see here, breathing acknowledgement. And that's kind of the first rough observation of the breath. I just noticed that there is a breathing process there, very simply. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. Simple. Breathing in, I'm aware that I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware that I'm breathing out. And of course, I'm assuming also that you know how to work with attention. Again, go to my video on attention to make sure that you know how to redirect attention and all of that. All right. Breathing in, you're aware of your in-breath. Your attention is in the somatic sensations, not somewhere else. And breathing out, you're aware of your out-breath. Now, if you just do that over time, you're going to see that your meditation will be limited, because the mind is so busy and there's so many things happening that it's going to be almost impossible to really penetrate the depths of what breathing is all about and to strengthen your attention. So then we're moving to the second step, the breathing immersion. So now it's as if in the first step you looked at a leaf, let's say, and you saw, oh yeah, that's an oak leaf or whatever. And now in the second step, we're going to take a microscope and look, or even a magnifying glass, and we're going to look at it more closely. So this is the same thing. We're going to now look at the breathing a bit more closely. And so now the instruction is breathing in. I'm paying attention to the process of breathing in, starting from the very beginning of breathing in, moving through every moment of the process of breathing in, all the way to the end of breathing in, and the same with breathing out. So you notice that your attention gets more focused, and you're following the process of breathing now more closely. So now notice how in the first step, in the breath acknowledgement, you noticed that you actually had a breath, which is a noun. It's like, oh yeah, there's a leaf. It's a noun. In the second step, we actually discovered that the breath is not a thing. It's not a noun. It's actually a process. It's a flow of energy. So when we look at the leaf more closely, we're going to find out that it's alive, that it's processed, that it's moving. So that is breathing immersion. We are strengthening our attention. We are becoming more precise, and we are following the breathing now. As you also notice, I don't use use breath anymore, or not much. Now I move to the word breathing. We move from the noun to the process, to the verb. We are paying attention to breathing, not just the breath. Oh yeah, that there's a breath. No, breathing. So let's follow it closely. Breathing in. And breathing out. Every single moment. My attention is in the somatic sensations. All right. Now, let's take it a step further. As we have begun now to discover breathing as a process and follow it much more closely and precisely, we notice something very fundamental about the breathing process, about the way that breathing occurs. And that is that there are two phases. Breathing in and breathing out. And that these two phases subjectively are being experienced very differently. Now, pay attention. How does breathing in feel? In contrast to how does breathing out feel? You can close your eyes if you want to maybe gain a bit more clarity. How does breathing in feel? And how does breathing out feel? Well, breathing in is a receiving. It's an expanding, and it's a sense of activating. Remember our sympathetic arousal. It's this activating, receiving the air, expanding. So feel that during the in-breath. Oops, it's not in-breath, it's during breathing in. Now the out-breath, is the opposite. It's a releasing. It's a calming, not an active, it's a calming. And it is a grounding. Remember, parasympathetic arousal. Heart rate goes down. So, in this third step, as we are deeply immersed in the breathing, we become aware of that difference. And it feels like a massage. And so this is the breathing differentiation. And again, if you watch my video on attention, you're going to find out that paying attention is an act of differentiating before we then link what has been differentiated in awareness. So, receiving, expanding, activating, releasing, calming, and grounding. Notice the difference of quality and how that massages the whole organism. All right. Now you can see we are getting deeper and deeper into the observation of breathing. Now, at this point, as we continue to investigate and observe, we're going to discover something interesting, which is that, yes, we have started by paying attention to the breathing there where we experience it most in the body, somewhere here. However, as we penetrate the breathing more deeply, we discover that the breathing doesn't happen only here. It's not only the lungs. It's not only the diaphragm. It's not only in the nostrils. It's not only the whole pulmonary breathing system. As we saw before, the whole autonomic nervous system is involved. The heart is involved. And more than that, other systems are involved, the spinal fluid, and so on and so forth. In other words, we start to realize that the whole organism breathes. And when I say organism, I mean the body-mind or the mind-body. They can't be separated. So not only does the body breathe, if I'm going to briefly indulge the duality, but our mind breathes too. So our organism, the whole organism breathes and is caught into this into this wave-like movement in and out. So the metaphor I sometimes use is, imagine being on a boat on the ocean. There is no refuge from the waves. You cannot escape the waves. You can try to maneuver your boat anywhere you go. You're always subject to the movements of the ocean. There's no escaping it. And this is now something interesting. Did I say that the whole organism is caught up in this movement? Well, that includes the observer, the one who is observing all of this right now. By the way, don't ask me who that is or what that is. That's the topic of a completely different video, actually for months of investigation. Let's just assume that there is that observer, that somehow you can intuitively feel. Well, that observer is also caught in that movement. In other words, there's no such thing as observing objectively. There's no objective observation. Even your act of observing is caught in these changes in the flow of breathing in and breathing out, the different qualities of the activating, expanding, breathing in, and the calming and grounding, breathing out. Now that's big stuff, ladies and gentlemen, but that's what it means to go deeply into the observation of the breathing. And just if you thought that is the end, it's not. There's one more step. And maybe this is the culmination. It's the most important step. Notice what happens at the beginning of the in-breath. You don't need to breathe out, do you? All you need to do is to surrender to gravity. That's all. It's like this pen here. All I have to do is open my fingers. It just falls. Same thing. At the end of in the breathing in process, the diaphragm has contracted, the muscles contract, everything goes against gravity. So, at the beginning of the out breath, all you have to do is let go. All right, so here we are. We let go. And we arrive at the end of the movement portion of breathing out. What happens next? We end up in a pause, a longer pause at the end of breathing out. In that pause, nothing happens with regards to breathing. Nothing happens. In other words, in that pause, again, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to solve, there's nothing to change, and there is no one to be. You just surrender to the pause. You surrender to nothing. In fact, try to feel that you're surrendering to what turns out to be an infinite spaciousness. Nowhere to go. Nothing to do. Nothing to change. Nothing to solve. No one to be. And you just stay there. You have let go breathing out. You continue to just let go into nothing, into spaciousness. Now what happens when you do that? Suddenly, out of nowhere, again, you don't do anything. Out of nowhere, suddenly a new impulse arises in you, in this organism. You don't do anything. You're totally surrendered. That impulse, it arises in you. And it's the impulse to breathe in. And you realize at that moment that you don't have to breathe in. It breathes in for you. So notice where we have arrived now. You don't have to breathe out. The gravity does the job for you. You don't have to do anything at the end of the out-breath, and you can just surrender to this moment of nothing and spaciousness. And you don't have to breathe in, because it does it for you. In other words, you will never have to breathe again. Take that in. It breathes for you. So this step is the breathing non-interference. It is actually fundamental to mindfulness, is to learn to get out of your own way. It's using the breathing to practice what we practice in mindfulness, which is non-doing, unknowing. And what happens in non-doing and in unknowing? We get out of the way of the wisdom of the organism that has a history of hundreds of thousands of years. Don't think for a moment that the measly little knowledge that you bring to this moment from the time you have been a conscious human being is any match for the hundreds of thousands of years of wisdom that are encoded in this organism that we are. And that's why mindfulness is so profoundly healing. It's because we learn to undo what we have practiced for so long in our lives, which is mindlessness, interference, forcing, and of course everything turns to ratchet when we do that. And so we learn to get out of our own way. You never have to breathe again. Get out of your own way and let it breathe. And that is the final step in the exploration of breathing. In this slide, you simply have what I just explained to you in detail. And so I wish you a lot of fun and many fantastic discoveries as you start practicing the real in-depth examination of breathing.